Hello there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Chaikin Minute. I'm David Shulin. On today's video, we are going to discuss the industries list in the Chaikin Analytics platform. Yesterday's video discussed the trends and industry group indicators here in the top right corner of the screen, and we did mention the industries group list in our list panel. I thought it made sense today to immediately discuss the industries group list, how you can use it, how it's determined, and exactly what it is. So as we see, of course, here highlighted is industries in our list panel on the far left side of the screen. There are a number of different types of lists in Chaikin Analytics, from your own user lists to the different indices, as we see before us here, our ETFs lists, as well as Chaikin Ideas hot lists. But when we click industries, we will find a very large and diverse group of industry listed right here. There's just below 70 different industry groups included in Chaikin Analytics, provided to us by S&P. Each and every stock included in Chaikin Analytics has one single industry group attached to it. Every stock falls into one and only one industry group. When we look at the spider sector ETFs, only S&P 500 stocks are included. When we look at the spider subsector ETFs, what we do refer to often as industry level ETFs. While that is broader than the S&P 500, that does by no means include every single stock. But these industry groups include every single stock and each apply to only one industry. These groups are in order of strength as determined by the power bar ratio. Now, we talked about the power bar ratio yesterday in the video when we discussed this industries indicator. Now, this says none because we're looking at an ETF, but if we looked at a stock, for example, we would then see whether or not the industry is strong or weak, and that is determined by the power bar. So the power bar, for example, for the entire SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, is shown here now. There's 121 bulls and there are 74 bears, which makes this a strong group, more bulls than bears. When it comes to industry groups, it's determined the same way. What if we clicked quickly on consumer finance here? We can now see all the consumer finance stocks have come into our list here. And we see the power bar for this group, consumer finance, at the top. Consumer finance is the strongest industry group based on this power bar. I know it's the strongest industry group because it is listed first amongst all our industries. And now I can see that the power bar has 18 bulls and 0 bears. We ignore the neutrals. We pay attention to the bulls and the bears. 18 bulls, 0 bears, a ratio of 18 to 0 makes this the strongest group. And of course, as we look at each of the stocks in this group, we see the industry is listed as strong in the top right corner. Of course it is. There are no bears inside this group. As we scroll through, we certainly see some neutrals. We see some with no rating. Why do these stocks have no rating? It's because they haven't traded for a full year. We need a year to get a power gauge rating. But consumer finance is your strongest group. The next group, marine, is going to be the second strongest group. Here you go. 0 bears again, 8 bulls. What about diversified financial? 6 bulls, 0 bears, and so on and so forth. 2 and 0. Tobacco is 1 and 0. On to capital markets, 58 bulls, but 2 bears. So the ratio, of course, isn't quite as good. We can actually view all of the power bars for these industry groups as well by clicking this arrow button at the top of our list. When we click this arrow button, this list panel will open. Bam. And now we can see the power bar for each and every one of these industry groups. And you will notice they start to have less and less green and more red as we get to the bottom. The weakest group is here at the bottom. It's very much the opposite of what we saw at the top. Food and staples retailing has 0 bulls, has 15 bears. and so on and so forth. There are 4 different groups today that actually have 0 bulls in them. But of course, as we get higher, they have less and less bears as well. Which industry groups are the strongest? Well, the groups that are the more likely to outperform are the ones that have more bulls versus less bears in them, right? And that, of course, is what impacts what we see over here, strong or weak. If we get to the middle here, we start to see energy equipment services as 12 and 12 listed as weak. We're not seeing a positive power bar ratio. There are not more bulls than bears. IT services, 23 and 22. There you go, strong. That's it. It's the only difference between them. Now we can find the strong groups, look within the strong groups, and maybe specifically look for stocks in those groups, right? If we're looking for ideas. We can also use this in the screener. You can screen for particular industry groups. Right? You might say, you know, I specifically want to look at capital markets or, you know, marine or something like that, and only screen within that. Or you could choose to screen for strongest industries. We see this, strongest and weakest industries. So what does strongest industries mean? If I hit get results, I'm going to get too many. 208 stocks in the strongest industries that are bullish, 668 total. Strongest industries looks at this list of industry groups, and it takes the top 20% of the industries, just the top 20% up here, and creates that as the starting universe. So we're only looking inside stocks, for stocks inside those industry groups. So you're not going to find any stocks down here in oil and gas consumables or beverages, et cetera, down in the middle to the lower part of this list. Only the very, very top. We cannot chart industry groups because they do not trade. We do not have power gauge rating for them or relative strength versus the SPY, et cetera, which is often why we use ETF proxies like our subsector ETFs or sector ETFs when looking for the strongest parts of the market. But don't sleep on the industry groups as well. With the help of the power bars, understanding the strength of the group of stocks contained within them. We hope you've enjoyed today's Chaikin Minute. We'll see you again tomorrow.